And then to this, both the House and Senate Intelligence Committees are pressing ahead with their investigations into Russia's meddling in the 2016 election. Former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson was on Capitol Hill yesterday to testify in front of the House Intel Committee. He told members there is no doubt that Russia was behind the efforts to interfere in the election.
In 2016, the Russian government, at the direction of Vladimir Putin himself, orchestrated cyber attacks on our nation for the purpose of influencing our election. That is a fact, plain and simple.
My question for you, sir, just to be abundantly clear, will the Russians be back?
I think we have to assume, for all the reasons that have been discussed here, that the Russians will be back, and possibly other state actors and possibly other bad cyber actors.
Mr. Secretary, was our democracy attacked this past election?
Yes.
By who?
The Russian government.
And would you agree that the first step to solving a problem, have you heard of this quote or this idea, is to acknowledge that a problem exists?
Sure, yes.
Why do you think that President Trump will not state that Russia meddled in our elections?
You'd have to ask him, sir.
Joining us now, a member of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. You just saw him, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. You just saw him questioning the former Homeland Security Secretary, and I am at a loss that the president has no reaction to this, no acceptance of this, no acknowledgement of this, and he's out campaigning among his base in Iowa. Am I way off here? What's going on?
Good morning, Mika. Leadership in our country starts at the top, and as we approach the next election, if we don't want to have a hearing in 2019 or after the presidential election in 2020 because another country meddled in our elections, we need our president to put in place reforms to protect us from ever being in this position again. And if he won't acknowledge that we were attacked or who was responsible, it's going to be pretty hard for us to do that.
The investigations going on, multiple, pertaining to Russia. If the president does not acknowledge that Russia's involved, and the president cozies up to Russia and confirms that he, wants to relieve tension, et cetera, by firing the FBI director, and if the president is campaigning among his base, it's kind of hard not to think that he might be in on some sort of scheme. Wouldn't one have to ask that question in one's mind?
That's one of the questions we're pursuing, is whether any U.S. persons worked with Russia, and there's differing views, and we just want to be able to run an honest investigation to answer that question for the American people. But Mika, I'll also suggest this. We know what the Russians have gotten out of helping Donald Trump in their interference. They have gotten unfettered access to the White House, where they've been given national security secrets. They have a president who really diminishes the role of NATO, a president who entertains the idea of reducing sanctions. But what have we gotten from Russia? They're talking about shooting down American planes. They're continuing to mess around in Syria in a way that is violating human rights, and they've done nothing to come out of Ukraine.
So isn't the concern, even if he's not, if the administration in some way or the campaign was not colluding, that they were at least staying out of the way?
At the very best, for the president and his team, it's bad judgment to draw our country and his advisors so close to a foreign adversary that's not our friend. The real question that we have to answer through this investigation is whether anyone on his team, as the FBI is pursuing, was working with the Russians.
Congressman, it's Willie Geist. Good to see you this morning. There's so much focus on President Trump and what he and his campaign may or may not have done, and rightly so. But I feel like sometimes we forget about the core issue that we're talking about, which is a foreign government attacking the way we elect our representatives and changing the country, or at least attempting to do so. Now that you know so much as a member of this Intel Committee about what happened, how concerned are you that this is going to happen again? In other words, have we done anything since November to secure ourselves better from being attacked again?
We've done nothing, and we've made ourselves more vulnerable because we're divided. And because we're divided, it's not only Russia who will be sharpening their knives, and our intelligence tells us that, it's other countries with similar capabilities, as well as your run-of-the-mill cyber criminal who will see this as an opportunity to involve themselves in 2018. I thought the most striking thing that Jeh Johnson said yesterday, he was the first witness to tell us this in our investigation, was that the cost of Russia's interference is that it has prevented us from doing the business of the American people. And he referenced health care, that we're not able to do our jobs fully for the people who sent us here because we're mired in this Russian mess.
But if we all, other than the president, I guess, if we all recognize that something happened here, that there was an attack, there was other testimony yesterday that 21 states' electoral systems were attacked, although no votes were changed, why hasn't anything been done? Why aren't alarm bells going off?
Again, Willie, leadership starts at the top. If the president isn't allowing his agencies to give the resources that states are going to need, and if the states hear from the president that the real issue is 3 to 5 million illegal votes that occurred, it just creates confusion.
So you think the president is preventing further defense against foreign attacks on our electoral systems?
I believe the president's tone and that the president's disbelief of the evidence is keeping us from unifying. After September 11th, we sought to understand through an independent commission what our vulnerabilities were, what we could do to close them, and make sure that everyone was safer in the skies going forward. Those were put into place. We are today, and that's the kind of unity our country needs from its nation's leaders now.
Congressman, we understand and respect your commitment to this investigation and to getting to the truth of what happened last fall publicly so that all Americans know about it publicly. But why not focus all of these investigations into one, into the Mueller investigation, which seems to be more independent, less reliant on politics, more focused? Why not do that?
Yeah, we want Mueller to have all of the resources he needs, and his job it's a criminal probe. And as a former prosecutor, I want to stay out of the way of what he has to do so that he can have an investigation that's not compromised. Our job is to report back in a broader sense to the American people how we were so vulnerable, whether any U.S. persons were involved, but most importantly, as I said, to make the structural changes that are needed so that we're never in a position like this again, or to make the American people more aware about what these social media trolls and the dissemination of fake news and how states can use their own intelligence services to really put out and peddle fake news to try and influence our vote. That's our job. That's not Bob Mueller's job.
Okay. I want to ask you about the sentiment about the concern that Leader Pelosi should not head up the party. You stand with her. Tell us why.
I do, and I hate losing. And losing earlier this week didn't feel too good. However, there's a fight to be waged in Washington right now, and it's not with ourselves. It's against the Republicans' mean health care plan as described by President Trump. So we took a district that 7 months ago we lost by 23 points, and we came within just a couple points this past Tuesday. That tells me that the battlefield should be expanded as we go into 2018, and if we stand up for people, for their jobs, for their kids, and for their health, that we can take back the House in 2018.
Okay, Congressman Eric Swalwell, thank you very much. And
thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.